Hello together and welcome to my channel. So today I want to talk to you about an idea that I had in a couple of weeks ago on vacation, and actually this idea occurred to me during a very interesting conversation that I had. And the idea is that ethics could be defined as a set of rules that organizes human interaction such that society can remain stable. And I think this is an absolutely fascinating idea. And if you want to hear my thoughts on it, then I invite you to watch this video. So, as I said, we were on vacation, my soon-to-be wife and we were in America, and there I had the chance of having a conversation with a real what I imagine to be like a textbook Republican. So he was an old farmer from Texas. He was a grandpa of a woman that got married, and we were at her wedding. And yeah, he's an old farmer from Texas, really staunch Christian, very like hierarchical thinking and view of society and the world. And so to me this conversation was absolutely fascinating and very interesting, because also this man he had very strong views on how he thought things are and function in the world, and he was also able to articulate these views really precisely, and it was really very interesting. So we talked about ethics and about many other things, but also about ethics. And I asked him how he thinks we can know what is good and what is evil, because that is the question that is always on my mind. And he said basically it's simple. Look, everything in life is simple, nothing is complicated. You don't have to overthink it. So he said that it may be hard to do the right thing, but it's very simple to know what the right thing is. Basically, you just listen to yourself and you will know it. So, okay, so I asked him about what he thought about circumcision, because this is, whenever I talk about ethics, this is often a topic that comes up in my mind. So, Western cultures say that they adhere to the right to bodily integrity, meaning that each person has the right to decide for themselves what should happen with their own body. But then we also allow the circumcision of boys for non-medical reasons, which is clearly a violation of that right. So what does he think of that? And so he said, basically, this is a personal problem and not a matter of ethics, because it does not affect the way I and he interact right now in this moment, and also it does not affect society at large. So that was his answer. And I don't agree with these statements. I think it affects actually both of these things. But still, I just found it was like a flash in my head. I found this idea was so fascinating, to just define ethics as that which has to do with the regulation of interaction between individuals such that society remains stable. And so what I want to do in this video is we will start with this definition, and I will present to you the points that I found working from this definition about what is good and what is evil. And if you accept this definition, then it is actually quite simple to understand what is good and what is evil, and it comes very close to what we kind of intuitively feel would be good or evil. So that's also interesting to notice. And these points that I found, they are often organized in opposites, meaning there is like one rule of don't do this, and then there's another rule of do that. And they kind of work always on this continuum of making society less stable is bad and making it more stable is good. But I feel that it's important to distinguish between not performing a good action and performing a bad action, or not performing a bad action and performing a good action. So I feel like not doing anything is on the neutral, and then any kind of action you take either goes towards making it better or towards making it worse. So that's the way I try to structure these rules. And also I try to structure them sort of from the more important to the less important. So I think at least the first couple are the most important in my mind. So the first one has to do with personal boundaries. And the rules are: don't aggress against others and defend yourself. And don't aggress against others is, I think, really almost self-explanatory. This is like, don't steal, don't rape, don't murder, don't attack or whatever, humiliate. Don't encroach on the personal space or boundaries or property or balanced feeling of other people. And why? Because when people do a lot of violation of other people's boundaries and property, that is kind of the definition of an unstable environment, where you have to always fear that you will be attacked or that some harm will be done to you. So don't do that, okay? Defending yourself, I think of this not primarily in the form of physically defending yourself against physical aggression, although I also think that this is a good thing, but sometimes also it is better to give someone your wallet than to be shot. Actually, I would say that this is for sure better. And so I'm not only talking about physical violence here, I'm more also talking about everyday interactions in your life. So for example, when you are at work or with your friends or with your family and someone tries to encroach over your personal boundaries, someone tries to oppress you or make you do something or make you say something or lies to you or lies about you or tries to take something that is yours or tries to manipulate you or hurt you or shame you or whatever that you feel is not just, then you should defend yourself. And you should do that by speaking up for what you think is the just way of treating you as you think every person should be treated. So, and if you are not treated like you think every person should be treated, then you should speak up and protest and say, hey, look, I don't like to be treated in that way. I don't accept this statement about me. I think this statement is false, and this is why I think that it's false, and you should not let people encroach on your personal boundaries. Or I don't know, I think it's not the right way of formulating it, but yeah, you get the idea. And the reason why is that not only should you, like, for society to remain stable, good actions have to work and bad actions have to not work. So if someone does something to you that is not okay, then you should stop that from working, because else they get away with it and they will do it again, if they are this type of person that just does whatever they can get away with. And so why should you only defend yourself? I'm not saying you should never defend someone else, but I think this is very critical territory, because if you imagine two people are having a fight or an argument or whatever, then you don't know the entire history of these two people and how they interacted in the past that led up to this fight, and what the fight is exactly about, and what the motivation of these people are. And so it's really dangerous if you get into that conflict as well, that you will end up doing more harm than good. That is the big danger. But when you yourself are affected by the interaction, then you can rely on your own experience and your own feelings, which are like the subconscious summary of all of your past experiences that have led up to this moment right now. And so you still have to be honest with yourself, because it is still quite dangerous that you will use defending yourself as an excuse to actually encroach on the other person, which is not good. But if you are honest with yourself and you truly feel that you are not treated in the way that a human being should be treated, then you should defend yourself, and you can be certain that you are doing the right thing. Okay, so that's why I only included here defend yourself. The next point has to do with the use of language. And the rules are: don't lie, and say what actually goes on in your mind. And why shouldn't you lie? Because human interaction in society, basically human beings live in groups because we profit from cooperating with each other. And cooperation it always kind of depends on a basis of trust. And if I can trust that what you say is true, then if I can trust what you say is true, then I don't have to put in all the effort of double checking on every statement that you made whether it is actually true or not. And that way I can save a lot of time and energy, which I can use for productive things. And so our cooperation will be very much more efficient and beneficial. And so that's why you shouldn't lie, because else you destroy that. Now, why should you say what goes on in your mind? Because if you don't say what actually goes on in your mind, what's actually the most important thing that you think at the moment, I always view this as a kind of a lie through non-action. So if you really want to say something, but instead you talk about the weather, then in some way this is also a form of untruth, although it's not lying, because you're not saying something that you know is wrong, but you're also not saying what you know would actually be important. And the reason why you should say what goes on in your mind is because each person is unique. Like, we know that each person is unique on the outside, on their features and how they look, but each person is also unique inside, in their personality and in the way they experience the world, in the way they value different facts in reality that they perceive. So we know each person perceives the same situation differently. They perceive different facts with different importance, and they come to different conclusions about the world. And so if you think of truth as the accurate representation of reality, then each person has a small slice of the truth, because each person knows a certain number of facts about the reality and draws certain conclusions from that. So no one can know exactly the same thing that you know, or no one can find out the same thing that you know. And so if we talk with each other about what actually goes on in our own mind, then we can exchange this knowledge, and we can each get information that we couldn't get by ourselves, because we can't actually perceive the world in the same way that this other individual perceives it. And so that goes even beyond just exchange of knowledge, like there is a lion up there on the mountain, because it's more than that. I can perceive things that no one else can perceive, and they benefit if I share that with them. Yeah, so the third point kind of also has to do with the use of language, but it's actually more about trust, or it's primarily about trust. And the rules are: don't betray others, and trust others unless you have a reason not to. So the don't betray others is quite similar to don't lie, because if everyone can trust that no one will betray them, then they can just trust that people will do what they said they would do. And that is a really, how should I say it? That is a really, it makes interactions much simpler and much more efficient, because again, I don't have to prepare for someone betraying me or someone going behind my back or not doing what they said they would do, if I can trust that they won't betray me. So that's very good. And actively trusting others, the idea there was that, or my idea was that, and it's not my idea, like I also learned it from Jordan Peterson, but if you trust someone, then that is a certain risk, because you open yourself up and the other person could exploit you or hurt you. And that's a risk that you take. But if no one is willing to take that risk, then there was no possibility of ever that a new mutually beneficial interaction between two people could start that don't already have a common history of good interactions. Because if you meet someone new and you trust them, kind of, not blindly, not stupidly, but still you trust them, then you open yourself up to being hurt. Like, they could exploit you, but if no one ever opened themselves up, then no new good interactions could emerge. And so that's why this is a good thing. Okay. The next point has to do with sexuality, and probably some people will not agree with me on this, but this is still what I came to think, starting from the definition of ethics that we are working with in this video. And so the rules are: don't have more than one intimate partner. You could add at the time, but I think probably not. And have a partner for life. And so, yeah. So the first rule is, this is basically, if you look in the animal kingdom, there are a lot of animals that basically function like this. So the alpha male gets access to all the females, and most other males get access to no females. And the males constantly fight about who gets access to the females, and the stronger male chases away the weaker males and then mates and has a lot of offspring. And so this is a constant source of violent conflict. And I heard that there are studies that show that polygamous societies are more violent than monogamous societies, because for every man that has two women, there is one man that has no wife. And these men that can't find a wife are typically the ones that are less socially, less successful in society. So they kind of accumulate at the bottom of society and become angry and revengeful, and then they have a big incentive of conspiring together to overthrow the current state of society, because that is their best bet at getting a wife. And from an evolutionary standpoint, not having children is almost as bad, like not having the chance to have children is almost as bad as just dying right now on the spot, because your genes won't go on. Like, there are exceptions, like you can help your brother raise his children and profit your own genes through that, but basically, yeah, so wanting to have children is a big drive. And if society is structured such that many men cannot have children, then this will increase the level of violence and thus destabilize society. Okay, now you could add don't have more than one partner at the time, because as you move to the new partner, the old partner gets free again. But there are many complications about this idea, and I think that especially the second rule here, which is have a partner for life, which I want to get into now, kind of makes this idea of switching partners less suboptimal solution. And so why do I think that? If you have a partner for life, I think that is one of the biggest sources of stability and security that you can actually have in life, because that is another human being that fits to you really well and that will always be there when you need them. That is the idea, that you have this human being that knows you better than anyone else and you know them better than anyone else, and you stick together and you help each other. So there is always at least one person on whom you can rely. And that is like, I don't see any other thing that could replace this as a source of stability and security in your life. And yeah, so when you get sick, when you have a psychologically difficult time in your life, whatever it is, there is this person that is there and helps you through it. And yeah, so I think that's just, it's kind of self-evident when you look at it that way. And I think also you can't have this same level of stability in a relationship that will end at some point, or that each partner could end at any point, because you always know that the relationship could end, so you can't fully rely on it remaining stable. And also, I think you don't learn to work through interpersonal difficulties as well if there is the chance, or if there is always the opportunity or the possibility of saying, now it's too annoying for me, so I will just leave you and look for someone who isn't so annoying. Because yeah, if this possibility is around, then you don't have to work through every difficulty in your relationship, because there is the possibility of walking away from it. So yeah, that's what I think about that. So the next two rules have to do with material possession, and the rules are don't be greedy and help others. And now, always when I come to this slide in the presentation, I think kind of, how do I say it? I think kind of, yeah, you have to take this with a grain of salt, because maybe it's not formulated as well as it could be, but I don't want to say you shouldn't want things for yourself. And I also don't want to say you should feed other people that are too lazy to work themselves. What I want to say is you should at some point be content when you have enough, because if everybody wants to have everything for themselves, then that leads to a tremendous amount of conflict in society, which makes it less stable. It makes it, and it's also not possible that everyone can have everything for themselves. And so people would constantly be angry towards everyone else that also had something, and this just doesn't seem to work. I'm not fully satisfied with the way I'm explaining it, but yeah. So that's what I mean basically. You should also want a good life for yourself, because I feel like your primary responsibility is towards yourself. But still, at some point when you have enough, you should recognize that you have enough and not just keep wanting more and more. And also the other rule is like, it's not about supporting the bad habits of people that are too lazy to do something themselves. That's not the idea. The idea is, if someone is genuinely in need or genuinely could need help, then it is a good thing to help them, because this person will at some point in the future or in the past help some other person that is genuinely in need or could need help. And so if everybody does that, then this kind of creates a safety net, although I hate this word, but it kind of creates a safety net that you can rely that if you get into serious trouble through no fault of your own, that other people will help you to get through it and get back on your own 2 feet. And so that's the idea of it. And if everybody did that, then society would be much more stable. Now, these next couple of points have to do with the more long-term stability of society. So the first rule is don't destroy the environment. And the second one is have or adopt children. Now, don't destroy the environment. It seems quite obvious, because if you destroy a part of the environment, then future people cannot use it anymore to live there or to produce food there or to do their whatever. And so the future society has to cope with fewer resources and fewer usable land, and that is more difficult, and resources will be more sparse, and that can lead to more conflict if there is not enough for everyone. So that's why you shouldn't destroy the environment. You should have or adopt children and raise them properly, because society consists of people, and society only continues to exist if people have children and raise them properly to become proper members of society. And what I mean by raising them properly is raising them to be strong and self-sufficient individuals that add to the stability of society themselves. So that's what I kind of mean by that. Yeah, so yeah, if no one has children, then society ends. So that's how I came up with that rule. And then the other 2 points are don't consume more than you produce, or produce more than you consume, the other way around. And why is that? This basically has to do with it's also about the environment, just about the society as environment, because societies tend to accumulate wealth or store up wealth, and then this stored up wealth can be used for different things. So, for example, if people produce more food than they consume, then a certain part of the population can start working on other things, like building a dam to protect the village from the flood, or studying medicine so that they can become a doctor and help people when they become sick, or build a large food reservoir that people will have something to eat even if there is a famine. And so if you produce more than you consume, then you can use the excess production to kind of increase the capital of society, and that capital of society has directly something to do with stability, because it gives you options in case of a catastrophe. Then you can use that stored up capital and the catastrophe isn't as bad. So that's basically the idea behind these 2 rules. Then an interesting thing is that you shouldn't only consider your own actions, but you should also consider the secondary effects of your actions or of other people's actions. So the rules I'm thinking about here are don't reward evil actions, and conversely reward good actions. And the thing is, if you reward people for evil actions, then the likelihood that people in the future will do evil actions increases because you have rewarded it. Because there are many possible examples, like if someone steals a lot of money and then throws a big party, and you go to that party and interact sociably with this person because they invited you, then they basically get reinforced in that it worked for them to steal because nobody of their friends objected to it. But if everybody said, I'm not coming to your party and you shouldn't steal and you should give back that money that you stole and you should apologize for it, then they would feel quite differently about what they did. And so the same thing, of course, goes in the other direction. If someone does something good, then you should reward them for it, because that increases the likelihood that people in the future will do good things as well. So if someone does something that is really noble and courageous, and maybe was a big risk or sacrifice for himself personally, but you feel is a good thing to do, then if you reward them, you show them that you appreciate what he did, and it will make it more likely that other people will do the same in the future. So yeah. And the last point that I want to make is this one here. Give your best, but don't drain yourself. And what I mean by that is everybody has different talents, or more or less talents, or whatever, but still everybody can do something, and actually does a lot of things during his life. And it depends for the sum total if those things that you do are adding to the good or taking away from the good and making things worse. And so no matter who you are or how talented you are and in what field you are talented, society goes maximally well if everybody gives their best. And so you should give your best. But you shouldn't drain yourself either, because if you strain yourself so hard to make things better that you don't allow yourself enough rest or enough pleasure to actually keep a positive attitude towards life, then either you will burn out and become a burden to other people, or you will start to become resentful and hostile because other people have a more comfortable life than you, and you just keep breaking yourself apart. And then, yeah, you will start to harbor this feeling of resentment and anger, and then consciously or unconsciously it will start to come out and you will start to make things worse. And so that's why I think this also is an important rule. So yeah, these were my thoughts that I kind of developed starting from this definition of ethics. And I think I'm still really thrilled about this. I really feel that ethics, like, how should I say this? I feel this definition it doesn't answer all of my questions, but I'm quite convinced that it is a necessary part of the right answer. Like, at least the right definition of what is good and what is evil has to somehow include that your actions should not make society less stable and fall apart. So yeah, I think so far I'm really thrilled. I think this is very, very solid. I try to incorporate it into my own understanding and way of seeing the world every day. And yeah, so I'm very much interested in what you think about all of this. Do you like this definition? Do you see any problems with it? What are your own thoughts? What are maybe your own rules that you would derive from this definition that I maybe didn't present here in this presentation? So yeah, let me know what you think. I hope you've enjoyed the video, and I hope you will come back for another video. So take care. Bye.